Welcome back to IJ Subito, an active week for Inter in the Mercato with some surprising names linked to us via rumors at forward, some sizzling comments from Ausilio. We're going to break it all down for you. I'm your host, Andrew. Sterling and Mikko here with me today. Sterling, always great to have you on. I saw you over the weekend defending the honor of the great state of Florida, which made me realize you are in fact a Florida man, which you often hear about in the news. So how's life in Florida?
Oh man, life in Florida is great. And there's a reason why you hear about Florida men all the time. It's because, we're just so happy and healthy and willing to rip our shirts off and wrestle alligators and do meth and all types of weird stuff. It only comes when you can really embrace Florida as a culture and as an entity. So, I'm happy to be the Florida representation here on this podcast.
Speaking of happy and healthy, let's talk about someone enjoying their socialist benefits. Mikko, how's the community in Finland treating you?
It's reading me very well, very well. Yeah, the weather is nice and life is good. I'm on vacation and enjoying my life, enjoying Inter, doing well in the transfer market as well, and so happy to talk about that as well.
Well, doing well might be a stretch, but we can get into it. Jay out this week. He's on vacation in Korea. So for those of you who complain about Jay's negativity, this is your reprieve. Irfan is basically a part-time member of this podcast at this point. So let's get going. The news of the week is Inter being all in on a transfer for Atalanta's forward Lookman. Lookman, 27 years old, and honestly one of the best forwards in this league. He's consistent. He's scored at least 11 goals in each of his 3 seasons he's been in Italy. But for me, this signing wouldn't even be about the stats because as much as 10 plus goals sounds great, it's all about Lookman's physical attributes because this dude has every trait this attack has been missing for years. He's quick. He's intelligent with the ball. I saw a stat that he would have easily led this team last year in successful dribbles. He had 10 more than Thuram, who led our team. He's just, like I said, routinely beats guys off the dribble, and he has that creative spark to him where you just never know what he's going to do next. So he's an explosive, dynamite player. It's impossible to watch Lookman and not be impressed. But it's a little more complicated than Lookman, good player, sign him, because first off, there's just the shock factor of where is this even coming from? We haven't even sold Taremi yet, and Ausilio confirmed we were interested in Lookman. And we were talking last week, we were doing our position by position breakdown. We were saying Leone is really only the name we're linked to overall. And now all of a sudden we're about to spend 40 million, potentially more, on Lookman. Oaktree is going to let us sign a 27-year-old for such a large sum. It's just shocking that this has come out of nowhere. And it sounds like the chain of events was Lookman has been looking to get out. You'll remember his collapsed transfer to PSG last season. He has Atalanta's promise that they're going to let him leave. So his agent started shopping him around for 40 million. We immediately raised our hands and said, we'll do that. And now there's some pushback on price that we're trying to sort through. But the real takeaway for me is just, this is exciting, right? Like, we're acting like a big club again. We'd be signing a player who can walk into our starting 11. And these are the types of signings that elite clubs make. You're scooping up disgruntled stars from smaller clubs in your league. And we talked about last year how we didn't change out any starters in our starting 11. Well, here is a clear-cut starting caliber player. Speaking of the starting 11, you have to say, Kivu's intent to switch to the 3-4-2-1 is getting clearer by the day. This signing makes absolutely no sense otherwise. The amount of forwards we have in the squad doesn't make sense otherwise. So I don't know why we're making the change, but it's clear it's happening, at least if this Lookman transfer goes through. So lots of open questions with the transfer still. Are we going to meet their valuation? Are we going to be able to bang this out? You saw last year with Coop Miners, Atalanta, they're hard to negotiate with. They have all the leverage in the world in a sense that they don't need to sell. They just cashed in on Ortegi. But Lookman apparently only wants Inter. There was a report this morning. Napoli offered him higher wages, and he said, no, I just want to go to Inter. So we'll see what this means for the rest of the Mercato. If we get it done, are we going to pass on signing Leone now? what are the domino effects of this going to be? But if you can't tell, I'm just excited by the prospect of this transfer. Is it irresponsible? Possibly. Is it exciting? No doubt. So Sterling, I'll go to you first. I know you have some concerns about this transfer, so maybe you can throw some cold water on this. What's your concern with Lookman?
So my number one concern with Lookman is it's a couple different things. I mean, number one, he is going to be 28 in October. No, that's not old. However, when you look at the type of player that he is, I don't think I've seen too many wingers that are high dribbling, get by on speed and agility that have peaked after 28 years old. So I think that there is some potential that, maybe the better years of Lookman as a dynamic attacking winger probably are behind him as opposed to ahead of him. Again, 28 is not old, but um, you know, you feel a lot better obviously if you're buying a 25-year-old Lookman as opposed to a 28-year-old Lookman. The other general concern is a lot of these Atalanta players have just really struggled after they've left that team. I know that they had a very specific system. We're going to be playing a very similar system to what they were playing. It sounds like we're going to go towards a 3-4-3 type of situation, which, also is somewhat of an issue that I have with this change because I just genuinely don't like any formation that is going to remove a midfielder. I think that most of the best teams in Europe play with at least three true midfielders in their formation in one way or another. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-1 in the midfield or a 1-2. Most of these top teams are still playing with at least three midfielders. I think if you take one midfielder out for essentially a winger or some type of a forward player, that you were going to get overrun in a lot of top level matches against the better teams, especially in Champions League. So that's a concern for me. It's not that I think that Lookman's a bad player whatsoever. It just leaves a lot of question marks in regards to how we're actually going to be building this squad and what we're truly looking for. If you think that he's going to be somebody who plays on the left side of an attacking trident, well, where do you stick Ram? You just went out and you bought Boney. Where do you stick Boney? You know, um, I don't think either of them would probably be a right-sided attacking player. So do you have three people essentially fighting for the same position? Is Lookman going to play a little bit deeper as an attacking midfielder behind two strikers? Not a position where I've really seen him play historically for Atalanta. He's usually been a little bit more advanced. And if you do play him deeper, then again, you have to worry about, physicality and winning the midfield battle. So to me, there's still a lot of questions around the move in general. I do understand why we are so excited about it as Inter fans because he is a bona fide star in the league. He's been fantastic at Atalanta, and we're acting like a big club. We're really spending money for the first time this year in what feels like about 5 years. I think the last time we had a big transfer window was probably in 2019, I want to say. So it's hard not to be excited about the fact that we actually do have some legitimate money to spend. I just question if spending it on a 28-year-old winger who has only really flourished in Gasparini's attacking system is the best use of our resources.
I don't entirely get the need to switch formations. I felt like we had a formation that worked, and unless you're doing a wholesale like change to a 4-3-3 or something, this slight tweak doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But I will say, if we had kept the 3-5-2, signed Lookman and not signed Bonnie, I would be through the roof because then you would have Thuram, Lookman, Pio, and Lautaro as your attack. You'd have a little bit of extra money to spend in the midfield or defense, and I'd feel a lot better about that situation. We have a bit of a question mark with this formation shift. I get the desire for more dynamic attacking players though, and if you sign Lookman and you have Bonnie, you have two much more dynamic attacking players who might be able to help you when you have to sit deeper against teams in European matches.
What I would say is that, you know, when we have five attackers right now, right? So you have Boney, you have Lookman potentially, you have Thuram, and then obviously you have the two prima puntas. That's actually still not, I would say, too many players to play with the front two. Because as we saw last year, really we you need five to play with the front two realistically, because injuries happen. We have a ridiculous amount of matches, and so actually having that fifth striker isn't the worst thing in the world. The issue is that you felt a lot better with that fifth striker when they were somebody who was old, when they were somebody who wasn't going to need development to actually get better and improve. When it was, Arnautovic or a Correa, it felt better having that person potentially miss out on a lot of matches versus having it potentially be Boney or Pio. So I think that's where some of the concern comes in as well.
I agree, and I think if you're brainstorming what this attack looks like, if we sign Lookman, you've got something like Lautaro and Pio being the guys up top, Thuram and Lookman being your preferred attacking options, but then you also have Bonnie, Mkhitaryan, Fratesi. They can all play these supporting type striker roles, and then you still have a glut of midfielders. So I think you have good depth pieces where if you sign Lookman and manage to unload Taremi, you have a pretty well-rounded attack, just given you're using these more supporting strikers. But I am a little confounded by the formation switch. But Mikko, you get in here. What do you think about the Lookman rumors? And since you're an optimist, how confident are you we actually get this deal done?
Yeah, you said it well at the beginning that it kind of brings some kind of excitement because it came out of nowhere. I remember during the spring, I was already not confident, but I was partly hopeful that we will spend big in the summer when these kind of financial numbers kept popping up, how well we've done. And when we get progressing in the Champions League, it just got better and better. So I felt that, okay, we're going to do some stuff in the summer, but then, well, we've done some stuff, but just not these kind of big pieces, not anything to our starting 11. But now this is kind of something we've talked about, that okay, we need that third striker, the proper guy we can add to the lineup, who can contribute immediately, unlike Bonnie or Pio, even though they might do that, but there's no guarantee they will do that. But Lookman is definitely someone who will contribute from the day one to Inter's game, and I'm excited if we can kind of finalize the deal. I don't know what's the latest updates. I think we are still offering that 40 million, and Atalanta wants the 50, but I kind of see that we will kind of find a way to get it done. Maybe we add a bit more. Atalanta comes back with their demand a bit, and they will get it done. At least there's been these rumors that Atletico, Napoli might be interested, but Lookman has allegedly said that he wants only Inter. But let's see, we've seen that story before. But let's hope we can get this through, because there's been a while we've kind of signed this type of player. I don't know if Thuram kind of was, but he was a bit of a mystery box in a sense. But Lookman, at least for me, he kind of feels like a certain thing that we know what we're gonna get, and that's kind of a nice thing at this point of the transfer market, when it's been a bit kind of the hopes have been I don't know, downgraded a bit, reduced a bit, what we can add. Everyone's looking at the costs. Okay, we can add the costs, and we need to sell players, and we can't sell Aslani, we can't sell Buchanan, and so on. So there hasn't been kind of a lot of hopes, like we discussed in the previous episodes. But now this came out of nothing, and in the rumors, we are kind of still are after Leone despite this one, which is a bit I don't know, is this really going to happen? But would be really cool if we could add Lookman and Leone both in the same window after all the spending we've done so far, because we haven't seen this kind of spending since the, I don't know, maybe the first Conte season, or Conte's first summer, when we added Lukaku and Barella and Sensi and who were the other guys. So yeah, I would really love to see this move, because it would also generate, I feel it would generate a little bit of maybe panic around the league, like the rivals, maybe Milan and Juve mostly, because they're, at least for me, it looks that they're a bit of a mess. So it would be fun to see how they're going to react if we add Lookman, like this kind of a star, league star player to our team. Quickly on our formation thing. You guys covered it pretty well already, and my understanding is that maybe we are not switching straight away out of the 3-5-2, but maybe it's kind of an option to switch. Like what kind of formation fits to certain situations. As Sterling said, I think we can have 5 forwards in 2 striker setup, but then it's a bit of a question who's the kind of the 5th guy. Can it be PO? Because I think we need PO there to score goals, and he might be playing a lot, but it's going to be interesting to see, like, if we have these 5 guys, what is the setup? Since if we have the 3 forward setup, that kind of brings another question. We basically take the midfielder out and add a forward, and then it changes how what kind of players we need. But yeah, in a sense we have kind of flexible players in the roster. Apart from the mentioned names, I think also Chalevsky can play there a bit further up on the pitch. So yeah, I think we are pretty well for both situations, but then there's still a lot of market left, so we can only speculate now, and then we can speculate more when the roster is more ready.
I do think that we'll find a way to get the Lookman deal done. When Australia actually comes out and talks about a player, says, yeah, we're interested, we made an offer, we have a good relationship with Atalanta, that leads me to believe that a deal is somewhat imminent. I think that we may even see Esposito going the opposite way, maybe even an Aslani, probably not as part of the same deal, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see one of those 2 players going to Atalanta later on in the window. But I do think that we'll find a way to get this done. And, the more you think about this in regards to the pure numbers aspect, if we are really thinking about playing with 3 strikers, 5 actually isn't enough, right? You probably should have at least 6. And if you're thinking about playing with 2, then, is 5 too many, right? But no, I do think that 5 is the right number for if you're going to play with 2. And in reality, I think what's probably going to happen is that you'll see us start the season with a 3-5-2. Eventually, Kivu will start to tinker, and you may see us switch to a position where maybe you see even Fratesi playing behind the 2 strikers. Obviously, Kivu has been very persistent on wanting to keep him and thinking that he can get the best out of him. And I think we all know that the only way you're going to get the best out of Fratesi is pushing him closer to the strikers and further away from, deep in the midfield where he's really somewhat useless on the ball. So, maybe we see a situation where it's really two holding and then one attacking midfielder, which actually even Zielinski could be good in that attacking midfield type of role as well, behind two strikers. And then maybe when we're chasing a game, you'll see, Thuram, Lookman, and Lautaro all playing at the same time. But I don't think that that's going to be something that we see on a weekly basis as our starting 11. I just don't think that. I think that would be a mistake long term because we certainly would run some players into the ground. So it'll be interesting, but maybe this is a good chance for us to kind of segue into talking about that midfield and what's going to happen with Çalhanoğlu. Andrew, you want to touch base on the news there?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So, like I said, Ausilio gave a wide-ranging press conference or not press conference, but he was at some gala and he started talking and people were asking questions. And overall, the takeaway was, okay, we've all accepted the fact Hakan is probably staying at this club because Galatasaray are spending 70 million on Osman. You aren't expecting them to have any money. And all reports, Hakan's dad in the media is that his dream was to play for Galatasaray at some point. So like, all right, it's not happening. He'll stay at Inter. We'll move on. But now our good friend Jose Mourinho has come calling for Hakan, and Fenerbahce are interested in the player. Most of these reports are coming out of Turkey, and I cannot emphasize enough how unreliable the Turkish media is. But it sounds like they are prepping to submit an offer to us, and Hakan has signaled his willingness to join Fenerbahce, which, like I said, is surprising just given the extent of the links to Galatasaray. So they're still not meeting a 30 million valuation. The number I saw floated today was 20 million. And it's just enough to at least make you think about it, at least, especially if Hakan really wants to leave. And it does seem like he mentally has one foot out the door. He wants to return to Turkey. So that's part one of the midfield. Part two is Ausilio going on record and saying that the club has informed Asllani that he needs to leave and he needs to find a solution. He wants to stay in Italy. The guy's been in Italy since he was 2 years old. He's going to probably find a club here who's willing to take him. It's just a matter of finding a good valuation. So what we're looking at is both of our traditional registas possibly being on the chopping block to leave. And then it becomes a question of what's the path forward for this midfield? Are we going to discontinue using the traditional number 6 regista type player, especially if we change formations? Do we want to sign a more pure defensive midfielder? Realistically, if you sell Asllani and you sell Hakan, who is just on enormous wages, like, you should have a good budget to go out and sign a midfielder. People really wanted Ederson 2 weeks ago, and I think it's safe to say if you sign Lookman, all possibility of signing Ederson go out the window. But there's going to need to be a new profile in the midfield if you sell Hakan, and the types of players Hakan can be when he's on his game, they don't grow on trees. I mean, these regista type players aren't very prevalent, and that's why the Rovella links are kind of always there percolating under the surface. So, Sterling, any initial thoughts on the midfield? I mean, I'm still not convinced Hakan's going to leave, but if he does, what would you like to see us do?
Yeah, I agree. I don't really think that Hakan is a sure thing to leave. At this point, I certainly wouldn't mind kind of cutting bait with the situation because it does feel like a potential issue that could fester over the course of the season, especially if he starts the season poorly or the team starts the season poorly. Obviously, with some of the comments that have been made earlier in the summer by Lautaro indirectly and then Morata directly, it's going to be very easy for fingers to start getting pointed if we have a bad start to the season. So, if it's true that he has said that he's willing to even go to Fenerbahce, because I can kind of understand the Galatasaray thing. Yeah, apparently he's a fan growing up, and there's some connection to that, sure. But if he's also saying, "Yeah, screw it, I'll go to Fenerbahce too," I mean, if that's the case, he probably should go, because he obviously just doesn't really have his head in the game anymore. Now, we can't give him away for free. If we can get 25, maybe you accept that. Ideally, of course, you'd like the 30, but you're dealing with these Turkish clubs. They don't usually like to spend big on transfer fees. They usually like to spend a little bit bigger on wages. So, maybe it's something that's a little bit difficult, but ideally, if he does want to leave, I think you find a way to get him out. And Yeah, if you're selling Aslani, which that's something that Auxilia was very clear on. I was actually kind of surprised. We don't usually see a sporting director at Inter or anybody come out and say, "Hey, yeah, this person has been told to find another club." That's as close as we go to scorched earth, but necessary. I think that we all know that Aslani is not of Inter caliber. He probably shouldn't have been here ever. And so it's better that we do finally cut bait with him. And I think Susic, in terms of pure numbers, is probably his replacement. So I don't think that you'll necessarily see someone come in as a direct Aslani replacement. However, yeah, if Hakan does move on, you think that we probably go out and sign some type of a holding midfielder. Now, the most recent rumor is Frendrup from Genoa, and I actually like that rumor. I've been calling for us to have a ball winner in the midfield for God knows how long, probably going on 5+ years now, where we've had nobody in our midfield who's really a consistent winner of the ball. And I think we all know that the destroyer of the early 2000s and 90s is not really a true position for top clubs anymore. Everybody has to play a little bit of football, but I do think that there's still some value in having somebody in your midfield who's a little bit more of a specialist. I mean, we've been seeing like at Chelsea when they played against PSG, they had Caicedo in there, who is somebody who wins the ball back consistently. Having somebody like that in a pivot or even potentially in that deeper position, he wouldn't be a true regista, but just somebody who's a screen in front of your defensive line. I do think could long term be a net benefit even beyond what you may get with a regista. And again, like you said, registas are not easy to find. They're not a player that grows on trees. I think that Ravella obviously is the obvious option inside of the league, if we wanted to go out and buy one, but dealing with Lazio is incredibly difficult, and it doesn't really seem like he's for sale this summer because they can't go out and buy players. So it's hard to sell when you can't when you know you can't go out and replace. And then obviously there's Stiller out there as well, who has been kind of linked to us, but his club is also one of those that's very difficult when it comes to selling. They want an extremely large number for him. He's been linked to Real Madrid. And it doesn't really seem like there's a ton of interest, honestly, on Inter's part. So I just don't see that we're going to go make a splash. We don't usually like to buy outside the league, if we're being honest. So I think Frendrup is probably our guy. And like I said, I'm okay with that. I think that he would add something different to our midfield. He's a bit underrated. He does win the ball back a ton. He's led the league in winning the ball back for, I think, the last 2 years in a row since he's been essentially in Serie A. So, yeah, bring him. I think that it could be a good fit for us long term. I do still wish that we would potentially move on from either a Zelensky or really Mkhitaryan. I know that we're not going to do that, at least not with Mkhitaryan. Maybe we will with Zelensky, but I do think that we could probably use one more backup kind of defensive midfielder, even if we did get his friend up. One more holding player, I think, would be something that could balance out the squad. I would even think about keeping Stankovic potentially and utilizing him as opposed to selling him for 10 million with a $25 million buyback, which seems obscene to me. But I'm sure the Mercato team has their plans. And just in general, what I would say is in terms of our Mercato and our Mercato team here, I do think we have to give some credit to Ausilio and Morata for usually getting it somewhat right, at least in terms of building a squad. I know that there's always these doubts about, what are we doing? But in general, during Morata's tenure here, I never really felt like we've had an unbalanced team or an unbalanced squad. And so I feel like they'll get it right in terms of the numbers and players per position again, like they have just about every season. So so far I'd probably give this Mercato a 7. But if you can maybe if you can get Hakan and Naslani sold, get a friend drip in, if you can get Lookman across the finish line, and then somehow sneak in a Leone and maybe even a De Winter, then I would say that this Mercato is getting closer to a 9 for me. So still a lot of movement left, but I do think that I think we're going to get it right in the long term.
as an Inter fan, you're always kind of daring to dream. But if we sign Lookman, Leone, and Frendrup, I mean, that's a 10 out of 10 mercato, and there's no way around it, assuming you get the sales you need on the back end of it. I mean, those are three high impact players who have looked great in this league. I am big on Frendrup. I mean, I don't know how much he'd cost, but I think he's exactly the type of player we need in the midfield from a work rate standpoint, from a profile standpoint. If we're really switching formations, which we've talked a lot about today, then you need somebody who's content to just sit back and disrupt play, and he's exactly that. So I'm excited about the possibility of that happening, but I'm not going to count any chickens there because I'm not convinced Hakan's leaving yet. And when we talk valuations for Hakan, like the amount of money I'm willing to accept is falling by the day, because I'm just further convinced this guy's mentally checked out, and we might have a problem on our hands as we enter this season, both from a fitness standpoint, from a emotional engagement standpoint. So it wouldn't take much for Fenerbahce to pry him away if I was running the club. Mikko, what are your thoughts on the rumored sale or renewed interest from Turkey and Hakan and some of the replacements we threw out there?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised with the Fenerbahce links, and I'm still not convinced they are real. The latest I read that there's been no contacts to Inter, no Çalhanoğlu hasn't talked to Inter, there's kind of nothing, and everything is kind of running in the Turkish media. So I'm not considering those rumors yet, but it came out of nothing, so anything can happen. If Çalhanoğlu leaves, we talk about the same thing again. If he leaves, but now if we are adding Lookman, it kind of changes what kind of player we wanna add, like you guys discussed. And it's not like you can find similar player as Çalhanoğlu from the market. That's not possible. I think he's so good at his best. Maybe wasn't at his best last season, but in general he's been very good when he's been at Inter, and we just can't find similar guy to replace him like for like. So indeed, I would also go with some kind of a ball winner type who's not maybe as good with the ball in terms of playmaking and that type of stuff what Çalhanoğlu was doing. Maybe Kivu is planning to change the way we play, not that much cycling, more direct play, get the ball to the forwards. If we have three of them on the pitch, it will help. We have Thuram and Lookman type of guys there, so maybe they can do stuff with the ball more than our kind of midfield down low. So yeah, then again, if we talk about the formation, can Frendrup play with Barella there, in a two-man midfield? I'm a bit concerned with the midfield as well as Sterling, that how we can manage the midfield if we play with three forwards. Maybe this is a talk we are way over our heads, talking too early, but that's one thing I've been thinking. What kind of player we could get and we should get to be able to play with two kind of pure midfielders? That's the interesting question. If we play with the three midfielders, then I think Frendrup would be an excellent addition, because we really need that type of player to our lineup. So I would also be excited to see him. I haven't seen a lot of links, but there were some mentions when we've been dealing with Genoa, when the Valentin Carboni went there on loan. So maybe there
price
is
only about 22 million, by the way, that I'm seeing.
Right. Yeah, maybe it's doable. if we end up selling Çalhanoğlu, we just buy Friendrup then, or there's some kind of a loan first or something. It's hard to say, kind of hard to keep up with all these kind of costs, how we add costs, how we remove costs, because Çalhanoğlu is actually quite expensive with the balance sheet, even if he doesn't like generate a lot of profit.
Yeah, his wages are huge.
Yeah, there's like a over 11 million gross wage, so that's a big one. So removing that one will kind of help us add some player who doesn't make that much money.
But you're nailing like my broader concern with this potential formation switch, which is just that like this feels like it would work against the bottom half of the table sides to have 3 attackers on the pitch with 2 wingbacks and 2 midfielders. But if you play a really, man, this is my concern with like when we always dominated Gasperini when Inzaghi was here. Is part of it because of the numbers game? Is part of it because of the shape of the midfield? I mean, it just feels very light defensively to be going into big games with 2 midfielders and like DeMarco at wingback who doesn't defend.
Yeah, I think that realistically, what we'll probably see is because let's talk about the pure numbers of it, right? If we're saying that we absolutely want to keep Frattesi, if we still have Mkhitaryan in the squad, we still have Zielinski in the squad, I think that we will play with 3 in the midfield. Now, the question is how you set up that 3. I think that we probably will go away from having 1 deep with 2 high. So that pure single pivot with a regista, I do think that it seems like we're going to move away from that and we're going to go to a double pivot now. I think that what you will in reality see is that we'll go to 2 at the base with 1 in front of them, or 1 a little bit further off to the right. So if you're thinking about playing a 3-4-2-1, I think in reality, one of those 2 behind the 1 will be what you consider to be more of a pure midfielder. So it could be a Frattesi there, it could be a Mkhitaryan there, it could be a Zielinski there. But I think that one of those 2 will not be a out and out forward. And maybe sometimes you'll go with that 4-2-1 because you want to get a Lookman into those wide positions, and you can do it more easily when you have it structured that way as opposed to a traditional front 2. But I also think you'll see instances where that where basically we go to like a 1-2 situation where essentially a Frattesi is directly behind the 2 strikers, and that probably would be more natural when you see a Thuram or a Boni playing alongside a Pio or a Lautaro, right? So I think that, and in reality, all this can switch at the same time in a formation, right? I think that Lookman has also played in the front 2 at Atalanta and has looked really good at times in the front 2. So it's not like he necessarily has to play on the wing. It's something that I think would give us a lot more tactical flexibility throughout the match, because you can easily say, hey, when we're defending Frattesi, you go wide, like we're playing in a 3-4-3, so we can cover more area of the pitch, and you can go ahead and press the fullback or the center back in that situation. But then when we're attacking, hey, we want you to come a little bit more central, or vice versa, right? But I think that ideally the way that Kibu sees Frattesi and why he's so hell-bent on keeping him is because he sees him essentially as that third attacker who can get into the box behind the front 2. And in reality, that's where Frattesi has been at his best. He's actually fantastic in the final third. He's our best midfielder in the final third. It's just that when he's out of the final third, everything else is very mediocre for a player of this level. For somebody that you would see at a big club, right? He doesn't really have those technical attributes and ball circulation and some of the stuff that you just kind of take for granted with some of our other midfielders. So it'll be interesting to see how we do ultimately line up, but I do think that we will end up still playing with 3 in the midfield, just based on the pure numbers. We can't go down to having, I think, just 2, because it doesn't make sense for us to play with just 2 when we have 5 forwards, or when we have, essentially 6 or 7 midfielders.
All right, Mikko, final word. Any thoughts you want to conclude on the midfield?
Yeah, I wanna touch on what you mentioned that okay, we can't play like this or with two midfielders against top opponents. And then I remember this one thing I I read. I'm not sure, was it like some player or who was it who commented that with Inzaghi we didn't play that aggressively in the defense. They were kind of made sure probably they don't take yellows. Well, we know the story with yellows and Inzaghi. Like there's not that much aggressiveness, and also when we get the ball, we cycle it. We don't play it that fast always, and maybe in a kind of a general note, that's something we want to change, or Kivu wants to change in our game, that we play faster, like all over. We play more aggressively when we want to get the ball back. When we get the ball back, we play it more aggressively to the offensive zone. So, and we've been adding these faster players to our lineup now, or our squad now. I was just thinking about this 2-man, 3-man midfield. Like, could it be that in addition to this aggressive play style, faster play style, we could manage this kind of a formation if Kivu can get kind of the, how do you say it? He gets the buy-in from the squad, from all the players. Kind of, we defend as a team, we attack as a team, like we did with Inzaghi as well. I think we defended very well as a team, but we kind of stacked the middle part of the field. We stacked the box when we let the opponent kind of cycle the ball, control the game, and we just defend there with one less midfielder. It's maybe a bit harder, but if we can kind of have the same kind of effort from all the players, including the forwards, to kind of do the hard work without the ball, then maybe it's not maybe that important to have kind of 3 so-called midfielders there. But of course, that is maybe, I don't know, maybe Lookman isn't that kind of accustomed to this type of game, but let's see. And well, maybe we need to sign him first, but I'm just hoping that we would get back this kind of eagerness to defend as a team, because I saw a bit of lacking that kind of effort in the past season, bit in the latter part of the season. Like Inzaghi couldn't get the best out of the guys with this like putting all the energy, all the effort, even when we don't have the ball. And we need to get that back, and maybe that's also the one of the keys to get the different formations working, so that maybe it can help our offensive play, but then the defensive play comes with the team defending.
The joke will really be on our listeners when we don't end up signing Lookman, and they have spent 40 minutes listening to us break down a Lookman signing, only for Alexis Sanchez to return on a 1-year Bosman. Okay, we'll wrap up there. Sterling, thanks as always for joining the podcast. We're going to be back next week. I think we have a guest planned for next week, so you can all eagerly await that. Mikko, you know what to do.
Forza Inter, Forza Ausilio.
That's right. Go earn your money, Ausilio. We'll catch you guys later.